According to the 1930 census, there were approximately 12 million African Americans. Many of these were the children and grandchildren of slaves. As of July 2006, only 8% of the African American population was recorded as being 65 years or older. With an average life expectancy of 72 years for males and 79 years for females, we have lost or are about to lose the foremost experts on how we are all connected. The time for action is now. Welcome to Reconnected. I am your host, Dahada Harris. On this episode, we'll show you how to use the census, genealogy websites, oral history, and DNA to begin breaking down the wall. Now, I know it sounds like a lot, but I'm going to break it down so that it can consistently and forever, ever be broke. So before getting into the census, there are a few things you should know about your surname, also known as your last name. In this case, we are using the name Broadnax. The Broadnax surname is as old as English history itself. Its origins come from the Old English for one who is stout and has a broad neck. Seems to be a pretty straightforward naming convention. Over time, the name evolved from its original spelling, Bradnick. Truth be told, members of the same family, from parents to sons and daughters, spelled the last name differently. Okay, don't hang up the phone on me yet. Many would ask, Brother Harris, why should I care about the history of the oppressor? Why is the surname of the slave master important to me? Because more often than not, your family didn't add the surname until given the option in 1870. This is the foundation of the wall. So before we can attack the wall, we need to know how to solidify our own foundation. This is accomplished with a combination of skill plus luck. Okay, we'll get to the skills later, but the luck comes when you realize I am probably not the first genius in my family to research my family. Our next episode will cover some helpful hints on how to get lucky. But in the meantime, understand that you are reaching back across several generations to a time when a high school education was a privilege. Most of the census takers didn't have a high school education. With that in mind, we build our foundation by starting with the things that we do know. Sure, it would be lovely if we could talk to the baobab trees in Africa. With a lifespan of several thousand years, they remain the only living witness to the blood deals between Africans and whites that robbed us of our freedom.
Today's lesson is how to use the census. It is brought to you by the African concept known as Sankofa, which literally means go back and fetch it. The census counts and records the population every 10 years. However, to protect critical information, results from the census are not released for 72 years, which is the average lifespan for humans. Therefore, the next set of records to guide you on your journey will not be available until 2012, if we are all still here. Step 1. Choose your method of attack. You may access the census via your favorite ancestry website for free at your local library or for a fee at your home computer. The alternative is your closest national archives, again free of charge. Step 2. Gather the names, birth and death dates, siblings, and counties of your oldest known ancestors. Step 3. Pick one to research. You may select another later. Researching more than one set of grandparents at a time may lead you down the wrong path, or even worse, nowhere. Step 4. Document any oral history you may have received. And finally, Step 5. Set a budget for time and money to dedicate to your ancestry. By setting a deadline and milestones, you will encourage yourself and others to stay focused.
So let's see if a 2,000-year-old tree knows what he's talking about. I opted to pay the monthly subscription fee to my favorite ancestry website. I gathered the information, just as he had recommended, about my oldest ancestors. Like most people, I just started off with names and very few dates. Through my interviews, I had at least found out where they lived before they died. Step 3 is the toughest part because I had to put my other family research on hold and pick a single grandparent line to follow. As you may have guessed, I selected my grandfather, Herbert Broadnax, where my known Broadnax lineage began. He died when I was 5. My most vivid memory of him was a game he called Pull My Finger, as he sent me on several quests for a tiny purple elephant that was released after every pull. But back to business. When I was documenting the oral history, 2 stories really caught my attention. One suggested that Herbert's grandfather traveled to Alabama to purchase his wife's brothers who were slaves on a plantation. Secondly, many family members recalled a portrait of Herbert's grandfather Peter that showed him riding on a horse, looking as if he could pass for white if need be. I was very intrigued by this, even though the portrait had been consumed by a fire long ago. I set aside time and money to follow up on this lead with a DNA test. It cost me about $60. Here's the tricky part about DNA. Because I wanted to confirm there was a white ancestor in my maternal grandfather's lineage, I had to think outside the box. We inherit an X chromosome from our mother and a Y chromosome from our father. That means I have to have one of my male cousins take the DNA test to find my grandfather's Y chromosome, simply because my mother only has 2 X's. Jackpot! My uncle's Y chromosome, inherited from my maternal grandfather Herbert and passed down to my cousin Vashon, did not originate from Africa. The Y chromosome is traceable for several thousand years to your earliest ancestors. Why is this important to your census research? You guys ask great questions. What I learned from the DNA is that there are common ancestors about 29 generations ago that hail from the exact same location as the slave masters. I now have X-ray vision through the wall. At some point in the census, I'm going to have to trace the genealogy of my white ancestors to find the point where our histories merged. The wall is less menacing when you know where the cracks are. Also, because of the confirmation of mixing and the uniqueness of the last name, there's a greater pool of data points to make an association. On the next episode of Reconnected, we're going to do a much deeper dive into the census and how to see past its inaccuracies, how to search one page before and one page after to find hidden relatives, and how to beat the sound X to improve your search results. Reconnected is brought to you by the Enitiative Group Inc. Your ancestors are waiting. The time is now.